What is up, you guys? It is H2J Halloween, and today I am back with another daily upload in the spirit of kind of going back, well, no pun intended, in the spirit of going back and looking at Spirit Halloween back in these previous years. A lot of you guys have really been enjoying that. I am going to start a new series that is analysis of these old themes. So theme analysis videos or breakdown videos of themes from previous years, discussing all of the props in them, discussing the layout of the theme, the different versions that we saw in stores, obviously, you know, the year that it came out, and just an in-depth discussion of the theme. And just overall at the end, I'll kind of give it a final rating. Like, I'm not going to make this like a formal review system, but I will just kind of maybe give them like a rating at the end just to kind of sum it all up. But yeah, I thought this would be just really enjoyable to go back in time and take a look at the different themes that we've seen at Spirit Halloween, but definitely give me your feedback and let me know if you are enjoying this type of video or not, and also what themes you want to see me do in the future. So for today, I thought we would start off with a pretty solid and interesting year, which is 2016, the Clock Tower. So I first want to discuss the different sides of the theme, kind of what elements make them up, and just take a deeper look at the theme itself. So first of all, this is the front of the theme. This is it in its full glory. We'll talk about in a second the different versions that we saw in different size stores, but the Clock Tower was one of the tallest themes that we've seen in history, so not many stores were able to house the full thing. But as you can see, this store was, when you had those stores that were in a warehouse-like building, they could have the whole thing, and it was composed of three different sections of the tower. We had the first section, which had the door in the front with Cerberus popping out. We then had another slightly smaller section with one of the props inside of that. It was like a little angel grave thing. I think there was a jumping spider right there as well. And then we had our final section, which had a nice little clock at the top to finish it all off. And you can't really see it on this one, but I believe that it also had a triangular, prism pyramid up at the top there, like the little roof. So it really was all out. And one of my favorite aspects of this theme was that they incorporated different mini props in each level of the theme. They could have maybe had some even cooler props up there. There wasn't really that much interesting to look at up there. I feel like especially on the second level, maybe they could have put something even more sick. Like, what if they had like a lunging lily up there? But that's neither here nor there. They probably, didn't want to put something that heavy up top. But I really, really liked the idea of the layering and that you could see in and see up into this giant tower. Now, also on the front, to note, we had those two gargoyles in the front. I actually bought myself some of those gargoyles for the front of my house. They do complement the front of an entryway really well, so I thought those looked great. We had some pumpkin detailing. The floor was layered with these orange leaves, which was awesome. The floor was also just all this brick. The whole thing had this brick design, cardboard to it. Or I should say stone. It was all this gray stone design that we saw, and there was like layers, but I'll get into that a little bit more when we look at the sides. There was like layers to the stone at the base, which was very nice. But then one of my favorite things, from the front angle here, was that we have those two big trees. Those trees actually returned to the stores from the 2015 swamp was the first time that we saw them, and I really, really loved when Spirit had those trees in there. As you guys saw when I did my school theme design idea, I also had those trees because I think they look perfect for they just look so perfect for a Halloween type of vibe. So I really hope they'll bring those type of trees back someday. But those trees also were actually incorporated into the theme itself because they both held up swinging props. And maybe that's the reason they haven't brought them back, because we haven't seen many swinging props in these recent years. But yes, on the left, we had the little skelly bones. And on the right, we had the scarecrow guy there. I think actually it was usually the other way around in the store. Not every store is going to be exactly the same. But yeah, so those were actually incorporated into holding some props up, and I always love when they bring it to life like that. So that is the front of the clock tower. This here's just a little picture of it being set up. If that interests any of you guys as well, I thought I'd throw it in there. And then we also have here the left side. So as you can see, what I was kind of trying to describe is that we did have layers to the stone flooring. There was like 3 different layers, which really kind of brought it to life and gave it this extra element of depth that it, more so than it would if it was just flat all the way around. We had lots of props featured on the side here. We had that grave grabbing doll. We had lunging, I almost said lily. It was lunging pumpkin carver. We also had the hay bale popper, which was a pretty simple but neat prop, as well as that arm grabbing tombstone. And this is where we saw our classic jumping spider over there in the back left corner. In this picture, you can see a very clear shot of those leaf designs details that covered the entire floor, but I do believe underneath it those is also, once again, just that stone designing. We also had this window on the side of the clock tower, which had a Spirit logo in it, and it was almost like a stained glass window, which actually, unexpectedly went pretty well with the coloring, even though it was kind of random to have a stained glass window, but it actually kind of made sense. Now, obviously not stained glass in the real terms. It was supposed to look like some stained glass, but it was like, very faded in colors, but it was still cardboard itself. You couldn't see through. And that's another thing, is that this didn't have any sort of walk-through element. It actually could have been pretty cool if they did allow you to walk through the clock tower. I mean, it seems like it really could have had that feature in there, but this definitely, there was nothing that you could walk through. This right here is the right side of the theme. We once again see that stained glass window in the back. It's pretty much just mirrored onto the other side. The whole design was pretty much symmetrical, so this entire side was basically the same. We had the tree once again. I didn't realize that the trees actually had some roots at the bottom. I never paid attention to that, but you can see that there was some root design at the bottom, which looks pretty awesome. We also had here our swinging scarecrow. By the way, Lil Skelly Bones would have been on the other side, but I think that normally the stores had Lil Skelly Bones on this side, but let me know if you guys know, but I'm pretty sure, one or the other is going to be on either side of those trees. You had some of the other tombstones here. There's the one that lifts it up and shows the little head underneath. We had the shovel tombstone, another grave-grabbing corpse, and then we also had the smoldering zombie corpse as well. Or smoldering zombie, what was it called? Groundbreaker. So yeah, that's what we had on that other side. I believe we also had the sitting scarecrow on this side as well. Some of this could have been mix and match. I don't 100% recall, if this is all accurate to what it always was. But yeah, we had lots of different props sprinkled around in here, and I'll tell you guys more about what it featured later down the line. Okay, yeah, so you can see in this picture of the back, which I was going to get to, that it does have the sitting scarecrow on that right side of the theme. It would be the right side if you're facing it from the front. So I believe that's probably how it was. I just don't 100% recall if it was always like that. But I definitely remember the hay bale popper being over there on the left side of the theme. And then we had sitting scarecrow sitting on an adjacent, or whatever you call it, straight across the theme, hay bale. So it was, two different hay bale things going on, which definitely looked nice in the back. And then in the back, obviously the main feature in the back prop that was featured was the howling werewolf. So that guy was this big animatronic werewolf, almost looked like something you see at Chuck E. Cheese. And I don't mean that in a mean way, but it just kind of had this big, this big animatronic look to it. And he was actually pretty cool. I definitely think there's been some better werewolves made in more recent years. I actually think the 2021 werewolf that they did was definitely kind of like a better version of this guy. But this was like the OG big fuzzy werewolf, and he was sticking his head right out the back of the theme here, and I believe he also had some fog to complement him as well. A couple final things I wanted to mention about the detailing in this. We obviously see that there is almost sort of some siding, some like wall that you see both on the front and the back that kind of pop up. You see how there's like a little stone wall, and then they have little pillars at the end of the little stone walls. And on those was these, I don't know how you describe them, but they were like these little planter things that stuck up. Those honestly looked a little bit cheesy, but they were an element of the theme. And then, yeah, you also saw that there's a lot of different detailing in the stone itself. We have some jut outs on the corners and on the edges of the windows and stuff, and that all just really brought it to life and gave it some more 3D elements. So the next thing I want to talk about is the different versions that you may have seen, when you were going to the store in 2016, because not all the stores are in a warehouse-like thing, so they don't all have a high enough ceiling to house that full tower, especially with how tall the clock tower was in all of its glory. So this was one of the versions that you would see here, where it just took out that middle part and just had the top section with the clock, because they always kind of tried to preserve that clock part. So usually they would have that. So this was potentially one that you would see where it just had that middle section taken out. There may have been some that you saw where it only had the middle section up there, but most of the time they would try to preserve that third piece up at the top. Now, what I've been referring to as that third top piece with the clock actually could be broken down further into two other pieces. So you could take that little arch element out and then just leave the section with the clock. And so this was very commonly seen in stores that had like a regular ceiling height, was pretty much just the base and the little clock portion and then the little triangular roof. And then even sometimes maybe scrap the triangular roof itself in those really, really tight stores. So yeah, and I don't know, maybe there was some where they didn't even have the clock, but I think at that point you'd be, getting a really low ceiling. So this was really what you saw in the majority of stores in regular sized buildings. But I think it actually still looks pretty awesome. I think that was one of the great things about this theme, is that it was very different in different stores, and it was able to be easily modified to suit the different sizes of the stores and still look awesome was the thing. It's not like it had to take like an entire floor off or anything. Like, it still looked really cool. It didn't ruin the whole theme itself. So let's run through the props that were featured. We, number one, had Cerberus, an absolute classic, returned from 2015. He had Fog featured as well in the theme. We then had Lil Skelly Bones, who I think also returned from 2015, and he was awesome as well. We had our big werewolf guy, I think it's called Howling Werewolf, in the back. We also had the Hay Bale Popper. Wasn't a super fan of this one, but it was, pretty fitting with the theme. We also had Sitting Scarecrow, who looked awesome as well. I think this was the year he was introduced, so that was when he was introduced. We also had the Lunging Pumpkin Carver, which fit there very well. We had the Swinging Scarecrow, so lots of kind of Scarecrow vibes in this theme. We also had the Smoldering Zombie Groundbreaker that we saw on that right side. Then we also had the Grave Grabber, so we had this one Grave Grabber on the one side and the Grave Grabbing Doll on the other side. And then we also had some smaller things like this Angel, the Shovel Tombstone, we had the Head Tombstone, and then we also had the hand that would whip around. That one was actually pretty cool. So all in all, I would say that the clock tower from 2016, side note, it was the front theme. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that. It was the front theme of the store, clearly. But yeah, I thought this was a very, very solid and cohesive theme. I also feel like when you're looking at that lineup of props I just went through, they all feel like they all kind of mesh together. Some are a little bit different than the rest, but they all kind of fit together. And in the theme, it really looked cohesive and glued together. It felt like everything was meant to be in the position it was. The color scheme was very consistent, nothing too crazy, like not like any insane green colors or anything like that. It was all kind of dull Scarecrow, vibes. It was all gray and dull and Scarecrow-like, and I thought it was just very Halloween feeling. It very much felt like fall. I felt like this theme was very fall feeling. We had the leaves on the ground, we had pumpkin elements, we had skeletons, we had scarecrows. It just felt very fall, and it felt very on brand. So I really, really liked this theme. Is it one of the best in history? I guess could be debated, but I definitely think it's middle tier, if not a little bit into the upper tier of Spirit Halloween's themes in the past years, especially for front themes, I think, because sometimes the front themes tend to be a little iffy. So honestly, if I was to give this a rating on a 0 to 10 scale, I think I would give this one an 8.5, guys. I think it was pretty solid. It definitely was lacking in any sort of interactive element. You couldn't really walk through it, which I definitely think it could have used that. I think it would have been the perfect opportunity to have you walk through it. Although I definitely loved that you had Cerberus right up there at the front guarding the entrance. So, you know what? It was what it was, and they definitely did a great job with what it was. So I give this one an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's one of Spirit's definitely solid themes with a cohesive lineup of props to match it. All right, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about the 2016 clock tower down below. Don't forget to let me know what themes you want to see next, and I'll see you guys in the next video.